What's up, YouTube? Preston here. So I'm recording this a second time because the first time I did something in my video editing program, and I'm still a novice and still learning. Which I say that even though I have an audio engineering degree, and I did some video, but yeah, I think I just pressed the wrong button because I'm recording on a Mac, and what I usually do, or what I've been doing, is uploading it to my Google storage and then downloading it onto a Windows computer, and then that is the one that I create the videos on, because this one doesn't do video very well. I know, even though it's a Mac, it's really slow when I'm trying to edit. So it's just much faster on my laptops. Plus, my laptops are far more current. Well, anyway, so I think that I didn't sync it properly whenever I uploaded it, and even though I tried to re-upload the video into the program, it's still assuming the same synchronicity, I guess, and it's not. I don't know how to change it, so I'm just gonna redo it and make it easier. And also, I was recording the audio onto Pro Tools, which is my audio editing program, and I was just syncing them up. And with my last video, which is over 100 views, which I'm so happy about, of all the videos I've made, it's the most popular one, and I'm happy. So thank you very much, YouTube. Thank you to all of you, or for the few that commented, thank you, and the likes. Please like and subscribe, by the way. Anyway, so long story short, you know, this is just a hobby of mine right now. Though if something does happen from it, I want to, you know, I would love to make a career of it if I can, because YouTube is a lot of fun, at least the editing and everything. I don't know what it's like to be really popular on YouTube, so there might be a dirtier side to things, but hey, what are you gonna do? There's a dirtier side to everything and everyone. Anyway, today's video, I wanted to talk about one of my other favorite game series, Command and Conquer, and what happened to it, and is there a future? So, my first experience in Command and Conquer was way back in ye olde 1997, I think, 97 or 98. My birthday was on Easter, so yeah, I guess I'm dated myself. But at that time, my very first Command & Conquer experience was on the Nintendo 64, of all places. That's where it was. And I would just play, there was like 2 or 3 skirmish maps, and that was it. It was like really, you know, because the 64 was hardware. I only played like 2 or 3 of the skirmish maps, but I loved it. And then eventually, my parents got a compact Presario with Windows 98. I know, right? Really advanced technology, right? So I played Command and Conquer, and then I played Red Alert. Pretty sure it was on the compact Presario. But I love those games. I loved it. Joe Kukin,
let's get out there.
You're my hero, buddy. I hope to meet you someday. That would be awesome. Bucket list item right there. Love to meet you. He's the one that portrays Kane. So, loved it. And then that was also my first experience with RTS, our real-time strategy. And in case you don't know, Command and Conquer, there's different timelines. There's 3 of them. But the basic premise is that it's again, real-time strategy. You have a few buildings that you build that produce units, like infantry and tanks and aircraft and such, and everything happens in real time. So the AI is also building their stuff too. So then you basically are kind of on a timer to try and build as fast and efficiently as possible to win the game. To win the game, you just beat the opposing force. All right. Now, with the different timelines, there's different factions with each of the timelines. Some more zanier than others, but the original timeline was that the United Nations, so from the beginning, and actually this leads to a good point. Sorry, a lot of thoughts are going through my brain right now. Basic premise of the original game is that in 1995, when the game came out, a asteroid made of a mysterious substance called Tiberium slammed into the Earth in Italy. And that's actually where the name comes from, is the Tiber River, or something like that. Both factions have different interpretations of where the name comes from, but anyways, Tiberium. So anyways, from here sprouted this stuff, this crystal, this green emerald-like crystal that harvested organic matter. So it has a leaching effect on the environment around it. And so it goes into the ground, spreads these roots, and it comes up with these little pods of crystals. All right? And it's very harmful to organic matter, human beings included. It has like a radiation-like effect. But it leaches from the soil and from the trees, and in some trees it'll turn into Tiberium trees, which spawn more Tiberium. And that's how it spread. And it spread like all over the globe. All right? More or less. A mysterious terrorist group called the Brotherhood of Nod, led by the aforementioned Cain, who is, yes, the Cain from the Bible, who somehow survived all these thousands of years, right? So he created this faction, and he's trying to basically do this thing called Ascension. Now, it doesn't... I don't think it talked about it that much in the vanilla game. They kind of retconned and elaborated more on that with each of the subsequent games. But so their main goal is harvesting Tiberium. And they use third world nations to support their military efforts as well. So to combat this, the United Nations created the Global Defense Initiative, or GDI, which, when you play the sequel, Red Alert, it technically started decades before, but it was just sort of it's more of like a thought experiment. But at this point, in 1995, they are legit, basically, paramilitary force for the United Nations. The United Nations, they create this force to specifically deal with Nod, more or less. So, anyways, they fight, and the final battle takes place in Sarajevo, in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And the GDI used their super weapon called the Ion Cannon to destroy Cain's headquarters, which is the Temple of Nod. And Cain dies, and then the game's over. Now, what I loved about Command & Conquer as well is that you could choose to play the good guys or the bad guys. And you would have a canonical, or not, maybe not canonical, you would have like an ending. So like each side had their own victory ending, which is cool because games at the time, at least from my recollection, didn't really experiment with that. As I've gotten older, I've learned that other games have done that. But at the time, that was my first experience playing a game where you could play as the bad guys and win as the bad guys. So for me, it was like revolutionary at the time. It was very popular. So the company, Westwood, they immediately started working on a sequel called they created an expansion pack called Covert Ops, because we didn't have DLC, we had expansion packs. and it just added like some new missions, a couple new units, kind of something that you'd expect from like modern day DLC. Well, anyway, then Red Alert came out, and initially Red Alert was meant to be a history before the original Command & Conquer, because you'll see Kane in the background manipulating the factions. In that setting, Einstein creates a time machine to go back in time to assassinate Hitler. And so it's an alternate history of, okay, if Hitler is assassinated, well, then Germany never becomes powerful enough to stop the Soviet Union. And so the Soviet Union becomes the antagonist of World War II instead of the Nazis. So it follows sort of an alternate history there using timey-wimey stuff, which generally I'm not a fan of unless the setting is based off of it right away. If it's already got that as a plot point, then I'm cool with it. But if it's like something like the Marvel Universe where it's like just throw timey-wimey ad hoc wherever, it's a total turn off. Can't do it. Don't like it. So then I played Red Alert, but my favorite Command & Conquer game, pretty much of all time, is Tiberian Sun, which was the true sequel to the original Command & Conquer. I'm not going to go into all the different Command & Conquer stories. You can explore them yourself. I just want to give you like an intro to each of the game timelines. So, because Red Alert eventually became its own like separate timeline, even though it was meant to be a history of the original Command & Conquer, it ended up just kind of being its own thing. So, anyways, Tiberian Sun, I loved it because, and it's one thing you're going to learn about me, is for me, a game is good if it has good tone, which, so speaking of Todd Howard, that's a thing that he kind of rants on in one of his on-stage, when he's like introducing games, his tone, and I really actually agree with it, because Tiberian Sun had this late 90s, like, weird, mysterious sci-fi to it. It was set about 40-ish, 50-ish years after the first game. And so Tiberium has taken over the whole planet, like, is starting to terraform it, turn it into another world. So everything's alien. The landscape and the music is just so atmospheric. Atmospheric music is powerful for me. If it has a good atmosphere, that's another thing I really get off on. All right, I love it. Tib Sun just had that perfect balance of aesthetic and atmosphere and tone, and it took itself seriously. I mean, it has some zany kind of like 90s goofy humor a little bit here and there, but you know, James Earl Jones was the GDI General Solomon, which is badass. It's awesome. But yeah, awesome game. It came out with an expansion pack called Firestorm, and I only really played it for the skirmish missions. Didn't really. I looked up the campaign. Not really into the campaign. It's kind of weird. The next Red Alert game, Red Alert 2, is similar story. I love the tone of Red Alert 2, but Yuri's Revenge is expansion. I enjoy the gameplay and the new units and an entirely new faction, but I did not really enjoy the the music was kind of, I don't know. It just kind of went in a direction, just to me, it didn't feel right for Red Alert. But speaking of Red Alert 2, if my information is correct, it was one of the forms of media that had to be called back around 9/11, because there was a mission where you had to destroy the World Trade Centers, and the game came out because it was 2000, I think, I think it was 2000, 2001. 9/11 happened in 2001, so there was like a lot of media that involved the World Trade Centers that had to be called back at that time for, sensitive reasons. And Red Alert 2 was one of them. Fortunately, I managed to get myself a copy, but I think it was one of the after ones because in that game, I don't think I might have gotten an original copy, but from what I heard, they changed it to where you just destroyed like a tech building or something, and that was like your mission instead of destroying the actual World Trade Centers. So, and it's cool because whenever you're doing because you could edit maps. You can build your own maps, and you can put the World Trade Centers in there. It's only like the bottom portion, like they never bothered to animate the rest of it. So it's just this hexagonal-looking, two-dimensional diamond thing. Well, anyway, Red Alert 2 though, the campaign and everything is great. Loved it. And then they created a new universe in Command & Conquer called Generals, which was it has its fans, like myself, but certain and sensitive topics were explored, which at the time, basically it was a product of its time. So if you ever play the game, you play as the terrorist faction, which is portrayed as the bad guys. Let's just say that, some people might be offended. But I personally loved the game. It was the first three-dimensional RTS for the Command & Conquer series. And it was awesome. I loved it. Oh, Command & Conquer in 3D! Hell yeah! It was great. And they started in Red Alert 2, but in Generals, because that time-wise, Generals came out after Red Alert 2 and Yuri's Revenge. They started playing around with each unit having their own cool, little saying or something. And for example, what was it? I was trying to think of what the Scud launchers would say for the GLA. I can't think of anything good right now. I'm so sorry. Maybe I'll play a sound bite. You can hear it. Anyways, we'll move on. And then I stopped playing Command & Conquer. I had started to kind of sort of move on with my life. Still loved Command & Conquer. Special place in my heart, but I just had other things going on. And then many years later, after I'd joined the Air Force, I'm an Air Force vet, I tried to install Command & Conquer 3, Tiberium Wars, onto my computer at the time. Wouldn't play. My computer was too old, I guess. So it was it wasn't until actually about 3 or 4 years ago that I actually finally played Command & Conquer 3. I actually played Red Alert 3 before I played Command & Conquer 3. Continuing the main storyline, the original storyline, I mean. Red Alert 3 was interesting. I liked that each faction was very much its own. Aesthetically and mechanically, they did their groundwork to make them as unique and distinct as possible, even down to building things. And that's what I liked about it, because with the Allies, you could build things in the queue and then just spawn them on the map. With the Soviets, you could build things, you could select what you wanted to build, throw it on the map, and then it'll build itself. You can move on and do other stuff. And then they introduced the Empire, not the Empire of Japan, the Empire of the Rising Sun. And with that one, you had little movable drone-like machines that you could just move to a location and it would spawn whatever it was supposed to build, which is really cool. And then on top of that, most things were amphibious. So you could build buildings. Most of your base could be entirely on water, and it would work just fine. It was really cool. I think they had some great ideas. They really dialed up the zany Red Alert stuff. Like, it's just really just kind of a goof, joke fest at that point. Wasn't taking itself seriously, which I guess, I mean, I like games that takes itself seriously, but I can understand that, you need some humor as well. Command & Conquer was more of the serious one, the original. Like, it was pretty much, they had some zany, a little bit of humor, but it was mostly like, really, it took itself seriously. Until 4. And then Red Alert started kind of serious, but then it kind of went off. It's like, all right, this is more of the comic relief kind of timeline. And then Generals was just sort of its own thing, kind of like a mix of both, I guess. And it was meant, Generals, another thing about Generals is it was meant to portray the real, like this is happening, this could theoretically happen now. Like, it was interesting. They didn't go with any kind of alien thing. They didn't go with any kind of timey-wimey stuff. It's like, because like the three factions were the USA, the first time that the United States had its own like dedicated faction, not just a part of the Allies. China, and then the terrorist faction, the GLA, the Global Liberation Army. So, yeah. Anyway. Now, before I forget, I wanted to talk about how games take inspiration from real-world events and can make them interesting, and can kind of in a way show how their age. And what I mean by that is the first Command & Conquer. So going back to earlier in the discussion, or the lecture, I guess, discussion in the comments, please tell me what you think. In the first game, the terrorist faction is headquartered in Sarajevo. Sarajevo's capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina, which is a former state of Yugoslavia, which is right there in the Balkans. 1995, all sorts of funny stuff going on, not so funny stuff, serious stuff going on, and the breakup of the Yugoslavia, and also when the Soviet Union fell, a lot of things fell with it. All right, and the Balkans was just kind of a part of that mix-up. So, in a sense, Command & Conquer was a bit ahead of its time, saying that the next real enemy is not going to be some kind of super imperial or communist power or whatever, or capitalist power. It's not going to be some kind of major big entity that's going to be the real enemy. It's going to be terrorism. It's going to be something close to home, something that you don't expect that to happen in America. I don't expect that kind of thing. Yeah. But, I mean, 6 years later, 9/11 happened. Technically, 2 years before that, the World Trade Center was bombed in the basement. Fortunately, it didn't really do much damage, but still. So the guys over at Westwood kind of, maybe were a bit more prophetic. But the thing is that, so they took inspiration from what was going on at the time and said, hey, let's build our game around this as an idea. And hence the, and hence the Brotherhood of Nod, based in the Balkans. I think it's interesting that games as a media and as a form of storytelling, as they are, take inspiration from things that are happening right now. But like looking back 30 years, especially if you were born after that time, I don't know, that might be an odd choice. Because like, what in terms of global news, what's really going on there? It's relatively, I know there's stuff going on, but it's relatively quiet in the grand scheme of things, especially since what's been happening since 2022. So it may, you may think, okay, it's like, where did what? Bosnia? Like, why would Why would a global terrorist faction be based there? It doesn't make any sense. Well, it does if you know your history. And history is important to me. So, anyway. Alright, so jumping off of that bandwagon of seriousness. Another constant running theme, and this is important to note. Constant running theme of Command and Conquer is you build a base, you go out of your base to harvest resources. Generally, you build your base close to your resource so you don't have to move far, but you have harvesters or trucks or whatever that go to the resource, pick it up, take it back to your base to a refinery, and that's how you get your money. That has been the Command & Conquer mold for many games now. So, fast forward to the ye olde 2010, Command & Conquer 4 is coming out. Now, let's talk about a certain, speaking of empires, EA. Oh, good old friends EA. Buying companies up left and right, liquidating them, and then putting the franchises in cold storage for who knows how long, probably forever. Yes. So EA had bought out Westwood and renamed them, and then renamed them again, and then sent their people to all their different locations, split them up, kept renaming the studio, liquidate that one, name another one, liquidate, and just kept doing this. So the hands were constantly changing that was holding Command & Conquer. To the point that there was a like an E3 thing, I think, where one of the developers working on it was asked about the alien faction in the game, which had appeared in Command & Conquer 3 and its DLC, Kane's Wrath. There's an alien faction called the Skrin that appeared in the game. So this developer was asked by this interviewer, "Hey, so are the Skrin coming back? Like, can you tell us anything more about that?" And the dev was like, "Wait, what? What? Skrin? Who are what?" And they just sort of awkwardly laughed and then moved on with the interview. So that's the people making the game. So you can imagine the public's response when the thing came out, because they completely got rid of the go and fetch resource system. They were starting to do that in Red Alert 3, so there were red flags, because you would, in Red Alert 3, they had this sort of auto lock feature for some of the structures. So your refinery, you would build it right in front of just a depot. This depot had your resource in it, and all the truck would do was come out of the refinery, go one direction, a few spaces, collect the resource, turn around, come back. And this little circle thing over and over again, which was so weird, because in the other games, you would build it close, but the resource wasn't in one location. It was spread out. In the case of Tiberium, it kept growing from a central source. They borrowed this for Red Alert 2 for ore, which is kind of weird, but basically it functioned the same way. It would spread from the center. In Red Alert 3, there's just like, it's just this little depot. You just kind of do this little truck thing. So it made it hard, because the thing is if your harvester has to leave the base, well, you better make sure it's in a safe location, or you're gonna not have money. Okay, which is a real world tactical strategy thing. Is you want to keep your supply lines protected, but you kind of lose a certain threat and fear if that resource is just right there, and the truck kind of doing this little spin and coming back, and like literally with my outstretched fingers, that's how far apart the refinery and the resource was, and it was all in one spot, and it would never it's like if you're going to build a refinery with a truck to go fetch something that is like 10 feet away from you, why not just build the structure on top of it? Then you don't have to have a supply truck. And then you're not as vulnerable. It was a weird choice. I mean, yes, technically your vehicles are still vulnerable, but it doesn't have the same impact of, okay, my base is here, but I've already harvested the resources here and they don't grow back really fast. So I've got to send a convoy or send some troops over to this next resource over on this side of the map. Or I have to try and move and build my base over there, move what's called an MCV over there to build a new base. Or, it's like there was more strategy involved with the original system than with this new one, where it's kind of like, it was just a really odd choice. Well, they, excuse me, with Command & Conquer 4, they doubled down on it, where, actually, no, they got rid of it. So, what the lore reason is that they created these Tiberium nodes that sucked up all the Tiberium into these towers. So to get resources, you had to go and capture these towers and hold them. Which is an interesting concept, but it got a lot of hate from the fans. And in my opinion, Command & Conquer... sorry, before I get to that. So the resource harvesting changed. And then what they tried to do is this sort of really bizarre class system. So in the original games, you just build a base, you build your units, you could build it however you want, all right? But with the Command & Conquer 4 system, they created these classes where you start off with 3 different kinds of mechanical walkers. There was an attack walker, a defense walker, and a support. The attack walker is the only building you get, and it spawns like tanks and infantry and stuff. The defense one's the only time you can build a structure, and it's like defensive structures. And I think you can build other stuff. And the support one was like your air force and like support powers. And the idea was that you would play with other players online in 5 versus 5 battles, and you would capture these nodes, and they basically served as not only as resources, but as victory points. And once a certain side captured enough of those nodes, the opposing team got a super weapon, and they also got a timer that if they didn't recapture those nodes, then basically they would be defeated. I have no problem, honestly, with people with content creators being creative with like anything. But I think that because it had the Command & Conquer name, that's what did them in. Because of the name. And that's the thing with a franchise, is when you have a franchise as old as Command & Conquer, it comes with a lot of expectations. All right. If you want to hold on to your fan base, you kind of have to play. There's only so much creativity you can put in a franchise that's existed for so long. So I think that these ideas would have been great as a standalone product, and just like maybe just create another Command & Conquer timeline or universe, and that way it becomes its own thing. But this game, not only were they trying to experiment, but it was the final game in the series of the original timeline. It was the final one. It was their capstone. And they did that. It got beat hard. And in fact, I think Steam pulled it from... I don't think you can buy it on Steam anymore. Like, I have a copy, but I've only downloaded like once on many computers ago. So, yeah, for those of you with these precious franchises, if you want to experiment, unless you're Nintendo, it's probably a safer bet to just just create something new. We only want something new anyway. Enough of the remakes, right? Let's make something new. Although hypocritically, I say this because if they remade Tiberian Sun, I probably would buy it. But generally, you kind of want to take your new ideas, put them with a new product. Or if there's like timelines involved, you could say this is just a new timeline, or this is a new part of that universe. It is separate and distinct. Not the final capstone where you change everything. Now, of course, you're going to get negative reaction for that. So, anyway, my voice is getting dry, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut it here. This actually went longer than the last video, but anyways, hopefully it works this time. Anyways, thank you guys, thank you folks for tuning in. Like, sub, share, talk to your friends, your aunts, your uncles. Just please get my name out there. I really enjoy doing this kind of setup, and I'm going to be making more stuff like this, I think. So anyways, I have been Preston, signing out. Catch you on the flip side.